Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in a New York Mets uniform. It is a sentence that we can now utter next off season because on Tuesday we found out that there is no contract extension between Vladdy and the Blue Jays, and he will enter free agency next winter. Welcome to Mets Daily. Make sure you subscribe, smash that thumbs up right now on YouTube. I am Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio on all social media platforms. Again, smash that thumbs up and comment below. Should the Mets go for Vladdy next winter? And that's the big topic of the day for me. It's something that I've been eyeing and really was eyeing once Pete Alonso secured that short-term deal because it allowed the Mets to say, hey, if we want to go spend the money, if we want to dive deep into that luxury tax and maybe go beyond our means in a little bit, you go for Vladdy. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr., with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, makes the Mets perennial championship contenders for years to come. And obviously this is the Dodgers you got to compete with, but the Mets would be right there with the Dodgers as a perennial contender. And Vladdy's the kind of guy that scares opposing, pitchers. And Pete Alonso does too, but Vladdy's just in a different stratosphere. And why is because Vladdy's in his prime. Now, he will be 26 years old come March. So in March, he'll be 26. So if the Mets were to get him, he would be age 27 next year. And it would obviously cost a lot of money. And, Vladdy basically said, they were not close to the number that he wanted. And he wants to be a Blue Jay for life, but he said they'll have to beat 29 other teams. And, if the Blue Jays couldn't do it now, it doesn't feel like it's going to happen in the future. And Vladdy could say all he wants about wanting to go back. It feels like he wants to test free agency and get maybe not Juan Soto money, but I think Vladdy could cost somewhere in the range of 10, 400, and that's to start. 10 years, 400, 10 years, 450, maybe 12 years, 450. It's going to be somewhere in that $400 to $500 million range. Is it worth it, though? I think so. Let me know in the comments. Should the Mets go deep on Vladdy? And let's take a look at the next years of contracts that the Mets are committed to in terms of big money. Obviously, there's Juan Soto to the top, around $51 million. He gets that 15-year $765. There's obviously an additional $5 per year after year 5. There was the big signing bonus. So the numbers are confusing, but it's around there. Francisco Lindor, he signed that 10-year $341 million deal a couple of years ago. He'll be owed $34.1 next year. Sean Manaea, it's $25 million, but remember, it's about $23 million was deferred over the 3-year $75 million deal. So, we're just doing ranges here, not the exact decimals and exact dollar amounts, but it's somewhere in that 18 to 25 range. Brandon Nimmo had that 8-year $162 million deal. You're hoping it's holding up with the plantar fasciitis. He'll be paid $20.5 million next year. Now, the two guys who we're not sure about are both Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. Now, we know the Pete Alonso situation. He has that 2-year deal, but he has the opt-out after year 1. He's making $30 million this year. He can get $24 million next year if he opts in. Now, you assume if Pete Alonso has a massive year and a great year and not a bad year like last year, he will opt out. If he has a bad year, he's on the hook for $24 million for the Mets next season. Edwin Diaz is intriguing. He has a potential player opt-out of $15.5 million after this year. So I don't know about Edwin Diaz. That's a tough one if he's going to opt out. He has 2 potential years and then a club option for 2028 on that deal. So 15.5 and 26, 15.5 and 27. So if Edwin Diaz has an incredible year, he could be another guy that opts out. But those are really the big money contracts on the books for the Mets. Obviously, they have Jeff McNeil as well if he's still on the team. He has a decent chunk of change, around 15.75 as well. Other than that, those are kind of the big money guys. Kodai Senga has around 14 million for 2026. Clay Holmes, 13 million. Everyone else, AJ Minter has the player option, and everyone else is not committed. So those are the commitments for next year. So could the Mets do it? Yes. Would they have to start some other young players for cheap to make this work? Yes. This becomes a lot easier for the Mets if Jeff McNeil was gone and he was off the books. Remember, Starling Marte will be off the books. Jesse Winker off the books. You'll have a couple of other guys off the books, but those are kind of the big commitments. So it would take the Mets probably starting Acuna at second, having Vientos cheap next year, having Alvarez cheap for now until he potentially gets a bigger deal, maybe having Jet Williams in center field or one of these young prospects play center field. Remember, you have Nimmo left, you have Soto right, you have Vientos at third, you would maybe have Vladdy at first, and then Lindor at short, Alvarez catcher. second base, center field are the key positions. The Mets would probably have to go young and hope that Vladdy makes up for that production. But listen, you got to salivate. It's the thought is there, and if I'm the Mets, I'm going for Vladdy next year. Guy who had 323 with 103 RBIs and 30 homers, and entering his prime. He had a WAR of 6.2 last year. He's a career 288 hitter. He averages 30 and 100 every year. So I would love Vladdy in a Mets uniform, and we'll see if they can make it happen. But Steve Cohen addressed Vladdy, and if that would be an option with some comments, and he addressed a bunch of things in addressing reporters from the dugout in Port St. Lucie on Tuesday. Let's go into a deep dive of what owner Steve Cohen had to say. First off, he talked about attendance, and he said the Mets being 18th attendance in 2024. He said, I didn't like it. It really bothered me. He also said, I'm really looking forward to this year for the fans to come out. I think it's a great game presentation. It's going to be a fun place to be this year. And he said, we've seen a decent, significant percentage increase on ticket sales. On that point, let me say this. It's expensive to go to a game. Like, if you're an average fan, and assuming you're not like me and you know people, if you're an average person going to a game and you're bringing your family, it is very expensive. Tickets, parking's $40. A drink is $15, $20. Everything is so expensive. And in the economy we're in, some people just can't afford it. So I don't love Cohen saying that. He's got to realize he's a multi-billion-dollar owner, and he's talking to fans, who are not. A lot of these fans are struggling to make ends meet. New York is very expensive. As someone who's been out of it now for 6 months from New York and misses it dearly every day, each day went by and I'm like, holy smell, like you're breathing and it's $20 in New York. So I think he's got to have some awareness that things are expensive. And I also think he's got to be aware, for a couple of months, the team was unwatchable. Yes, they turned it around, but I'm not sure if everyone bought in by September and thought that team was going to be it. Where this year, like he said, we have to make the playoffs. That's the minimum. I think this team now, adding Juan Soto, bringing Pete back, all the other additions they made, the expectations are for this to be a championship caliber team. And I think you're going to see from the open and the get-go that fans will support a championship caliber team. But with everything going on in the economy and everything going on behind the scenes last year, I get it. Listen, it should be more than 18,000 people in a playoff push series against the Nationals. But the weather at some points was bad. April games is cold. September games sometimes at night get cold. And he's got to do a better job of pricing this. On a weeknight against the Nationals, if you're worried about attendance, why don't you make all the concessions cheaper in September? If you're worried, make it, $5 hot dog, $5 beers, bring everything down. Because I do think make parking more affordable. $40 to park, like you can get an Uber both ways from certain areas of Queens for cheaper than it is to park outside the stadium. Like, that's one thing that's got to be addressed. You got to get the parking prices down. You got to make it more affordable for fans to drive to the game. Not everyone is comfortable taking the train or wants to take the train or wants to take the train back, or, you got to make it affordable for the family that needs to park and, food and drinks. So that's one thing I'd say on attendance. Like, I think it's going to be much better. I think they're going to be in a much better place with attendance. But you also have to make it more affordable. And each year, I know for season ticket holders, because they tell me, prices have gone up. There's like, one row is this price, and other row is $1,000 more. Like, you got to make it more affordable for the average fan to get out there. And then you're going to see numbers up the wazoo. But I think just because the team is better, you're going to see an increase there. And, yeah, I agree. I think the minimum here is the playoffs. You got to make the playoffs. On the Vladdy front, he talked about, I'd like to get below the Cohen tax on spending, meaning he doesn't want to blow through that luxury tax threshold, which makes you think, hey, are the Mets going to get Vladdy? He said he's a great ball player. I'll worry about that next year. Obviously, with payroll considerations, you can't have too many long-term contracts because then you lose your roster flexibility. I'll let my baseball people make that decision. So that's going to be a Stearns thing. And, that might not be a Stearns thing because Stearns doesn't like giving out those kind of contracts. So I'm very intrigued to see, will Vladdy be in consideration? My gut tells me Mets 1, Red Sox 2, and the Blue Jays 3 in terms of the top 3 teams that'll be in on him. I think the Red Sox will be right there trying to pay him. I don't think he'll go to the Yankees. He's already said he hates the Yankees. I'd be shocked. So we'll see about that. But, again, attendance will be better. But really, you incorporated those dollar dog nights and cheaper hot dog nights. Like, make that a thing all year. Like, you had that Tuesdays. Make Wednesday be dollar pretzel night. If you do that throughout the year and make each weeknight a themed kind of night, I guarantee you're going to see more people coming because we know the team is good, but now we need to know our wallets are good going to the game because no loser is bringing like sandwiches. Like, listen, I think that's smart and financial, but when you go into Citi Field, you want a taste of the food. It's voted by number one by USA Today, and you could vote for them, by the way. The poll is out. They tweeted it out. Go vote for Citi Field for number one food in baseball. But, everyone wants to eat when they go in the stadium, but not everyone's wallet wants to pay for the food. So, I shouldn't call the people a loser. I think they're smart for bringing food in, but when you're at a game, you want to eat the finest food at Citi Field, but you can't do it often with what the prices are at. And, I'm curious what the price is at for Jose Quintana. I mentioned it yesterday. Hip, hip, Jose. Should the Mets add their old friend Jose Quintana to the rotation? To me, it's a no-brainer. I think you got to add someone in. I think Quintana's price might have went up, and a big reason of that, look at his last 6 starts last season. He gave up 3 earned runs in total over his last 6 starts. 4 of those 6 starts were shutouts, were scoreless starts. And his overall numbers, 3.75 ERA. He never got hurt. 31 starts, 170-plus innings. He was 10-10. But Jose Quintana put up a really strong season. And most importantly, he was big down the stretch, and he had just over 3 ERA in his 3 postseason starts. So he was good in the playoffs. He was, Cy Young-esque for the last 6 starts of the season. So Jose Quintana is still out there, and he's familiar with this team, and I think it makes a lot of sense if the Mets decided to go to Jose Quintana. It also makes a lot of sense that you comment in this video because we'll be reading the top 3 comments on tomorrow's Hump Day mailbag. And then Thursday, I'm expecting to launch our first guest on Mets Daily, so stay tuned for that. But leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Do you want Vladdy? What do you think about what Cohen said? Were you offended about the attendance? And should the Mets add Jose Quintana? I'm Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio on all social media. Give me a follow. Smash that thumbs up. Subscribe to Mets Daily and share the channel. We'll see you on tomorrow, February 19th on a Hump Day, right here on Mets Daily. Thanks for watching.